throughout. Is there a difference in white male privilege and black? There may not be. We don't really even care, right? We care about our community and those skills that we have to kind of leave behind, that all those things that have been accepted, as Brother Edward said, that aren't really accepted. There are dysfunctions that we have learned to accept and not necessarily identify separate families, this, that, uncle, this one, and that those strange relationships that, you become an adult and figure out what the relationships really were. They actually are wrong. Right? And that we as adults, we really have those conversations. I want to thank Wanda for, let's say, for the work that she continues to do in the community and for her journey and allowing us all to be a part of that and sharing that journey, because I think that we are all better because of it. And I want to thank our upcoming speaker and guests, and again, Brother Edwards, for coming and sharing their knowledge and professionalism with our community, because we're all going to be better because of it. And certainly these are conversations that we need to have, that we have not had in the past. And there are a bunch of, we could really have this honest conversation, right? One of my favorite quotes is something that Muhammad Ali used, and he said that a man that tells you that he is the same at 50 as he was at 25 has wasted 25 years of his life. Right? What does that mean? That means that we evolve. Right? And I may have been some of those stereotypes. I think that we all fit in some capacity in our lives, and that we evolve, and that we move forward. And because of this, we get better. And the young folks, I assure you, we evolve and we get better. Right? And this is coming from a teen parent that at 30 was widowed, and a single parent, could not braid hair, could not cook, and didn't necessarily have these skills, right? But as a community, we figured it out, right? I thought I was on my own, but I will tell you, not being able to cook, not being able to braid hair, not being able to maneuver and pick up kids and do all the things that you need to do, you get it done. So what does that tell you? When you think you're alone, you got all this community and all this family that it's like footprints in the sand, right? Yeah. That you all are carrying. So, thank you. This is brave work, man. This is, and trust me, this is it. But I am proud to say that there's a conversation that is pretty regular, and particularly amongst young people in the community, that they are embracing these conversations in a way that we never would have. Beautiful.
Thank you. Now we have Mr. Edwards.
Yes. I guess my biggest obstacle is the word privilege, where it really should be something about character.
To vote when? There you go. You understand? So we live in this world. I mean, I'm part of a fraternity where, I see it. The submissiveness of the role of women within this particular place. It's evident. And now I'm going to be a devil's advocate, right? I'm a male, single male, so on and so forth, right? Talk about privilege. Yes, when I grew up, I got away with things that other people did not get away.
Thanks for all
Another thing that I wanted to say, that yes, from the male perspective, right? I'd rather find myself a single woman because it's less work for me. I'm trying to tell you what we're thinking. It's less work for me, less stress. I don't have to love the kids. I don't even have to love the family, because nowadays people, you watch a sitcom, it's all about getting away from the parents and making fun of it. So I really don't want that one. I have one daughter. Is it easy for me to date and all? Yes. Even though I have this responsibility that gives me some sort of, a part of my time is into that. You know, the relationship with me and my daughter is not into the relationship when the woman wants this attention situation. And for me to say that, no, I'm going to pick, you know, a woman with 13 kids and all this other stuff, no matter what part of society she's from, I'm going to talk about it myself, about the work I have to do with that, because this is the male mentality is a very economic way of thinking. You know?
And rightfully, why would you choose somebody with a bunch of children over someone who
Well,
doesn't
the
have
other
any?
part, keeping in line with the whole privilege aspect, I see you. The other part of it is, realistically again, when we have these single parent households, who are typically heading them? Who's usually burdened with raising the children? All right, then so once again, there's another advantage there because most of the men, we're just getting into single fatherhood. And we're even celebrating that.
How it affects us in all areas, you know, of our life, you know, with different kinds of mental health challenges and social challenges and emotional. All of those aspects come along with, you know, domestic or / family violence. But again, child sexual abuse is another form of it. Who has ever thought about that? Because when you think about domestic violence, what's the first thing that comes to your head?
Adults.
I'm sorry?
Adults.
Adults, What else? Fighting? Yes, exactly. Those are the first thing you think about when you think about a domestic violence situation. That, you know, a guy is beating up, you know, a lady, or beating up, you know, the children. That's the first thing you think about. Fist up, you know, he's down, he's, you know, subduing control over her. That's what you think about. But has anybody thought about that child sexual abuse is actually a form of domestic violence? Good. I hope you have, because it is. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Just going to mention about the definition of child sexual abuse. Ms. Best shared the definition of domestic violence. We're just going to talk about some of the facts and statistics surrounding domestic violence and child sexual abuse, and then we're going to talk about services. Who knows or who's familiar with the concept of child sexual abuse? You, sir?
It tends to relate to any time which someone of an adult or authority figure is taking advantage of a child in some type of sexual gratification.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Did everybody hear the gentleman? Yeah. Exactly. Child sexual abuse is a form of child abuse that includes sexual activity with a minor. And then again, most of the time, child sexual abuse happens or takes place in the home, in a domestic situation, which is the reason why we also refer to it as domestic violence. Because again, it occurs in the home or the home of a family or a friend, whomever the abuser may be, their perpetrator. So that's the reason why we refer to it also as domestic violence. Again, the perpetrators or abusers can be anyone. It can be the dad. It can be a stepfather. It can be a mom. It can be a babysitter. It can be your next door neighbor. It can be an older sibling. It can be a teacher or a coach. Okay? So does any one of you know anyone that's been sexually abused or have been brave enough to share that?
Back in Jamaica, where I'm from, as you know, the priests, they abuse the kids.
Yes.
And there was a little altar boy, my neighbor, and we don't know, in Jamaica when I grew up, we didn't know about sexual abuse and the priests.
Because all you hear is teen sex being connected to promiscuity
Right.
and absent
So why?
parenting.
Why is that young lady so promiscuous? Why
But
is
it never
she
gets to this
10
level
and
of
11
conversation.
years old and 12 years old time she is, having her period? Why? If any of us ever start to think, why? We judge them because we're on them. That fast hair girl, she's so hot. Stuff that our parents used to say to her, But why? Why is she like that?
Because it's tied into the male privilege and the fact that children have no rights, children have no voices. I remember back in the days, children are to be seen and not heard. And so, because there are no protection around children, and this false pedestal of men's ego, of feeling the comfortability of like, I can just rape on this girl and nothing's gonna come of it. Like, everybody's gonna protect me, nobody in the family's gonna snitch. I know somebody in the family want a man in the family, so you're gonna ride out and she's just gonna have to take her burden to keep it pushing, and then still expect for her to be a normal person and still be able to take all these labels from society and family members, expect for her to just, okay, I'm gonna come back being a hoe. I'm not a hoe. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Absolutely. Ma'am?
You said that 70 to 80% of victims experience mental health challenges, because I know someone like that, and it's opposite of being fat. She's depressed, and in her choices of relationship and men, whoever gave her.
Finally, establish dialogue with your children. Establish dialogue. You don't have to scare them to death, have them walking around thinking, oh my God, everybody's out to hurt, because everybody's not out to hurt you. But to establish a dialogue, I'm developing a curriculum now called Teach Me to Tell. And it'll target, the children that's in those formative years, which are the years that most children are, targeted, especially in that, that 5 to 10 year, age range, when they're most vulnerable. But it's called Teach Me to Tell. And it's part of the curriculum will be to have parents to be able to ask open-ended questions, with children, open-ended questions, and to establish dialogue, to say, what if da-da-da-da-da happened? How would you handle that? Or what if so-and-so and so-and-so came to tell you that this happened? How would you, expound on that? Or how would you handle that situation? Or do you know that mommies are here, to explain whatever that you need to explain to a child to help them? Because the thing about it, we know that child sexual abuse is a deep conversation. It's a conversation that, although that it has happened to some of us, but it's a conversation that many of us are not ready to talk about. So we understand that not only that, if you're not ready to even handle it within yourself, I know how difficult it would be to speak to a child about it. So the questions and the curriculum will be made up of things that can help you, and that can help you to create scenarios and situations that will help you get the word out to your children again, so a child will know that I can run to my mom, or I can tell my dad, or I can tell my auntie, or I can tell, my teacher that something is wrong, something is happening to me, and that I need help.
Can I say something?
Sure.
That's what like everybody should know about that. I deal with children every day, and I tell their parents, when you come home from work, how was your day today? What happened today? Because sometimes a child needs to talk to their parent, good or bad.
Right. You need
But,
to. Yes.
and if the parents don't know, well, why didn't you tell? Like you have to, and for the child not to be, don't put fear in the child, but for the child to be open with their parent. And because we have this every day in the school system, where the parent does not, the child does not relate to the parent, when they get bullied in school, the next day blah, blah, blah.
Right.
So,
We know parents. We know parents are busy.
Yeah, but
most
you gotta
parents
take out
work
time for your
single-
children, you gotta take
I
out
know,
time.
Miss Bess is telling me to wrap it up. We know parents are busy.
I'm sorry.
And so, we understand that, especially if you're a single mom. So we want, to understand that. We understand that. We really do. But the thing about it is we have to pay more attention and let children know that they can come to us. So just protecting our children, we just educate, notify, and develop. Very important.
Okay, next we're gonna have our panel. This is the last everybody feel informed?
Yes.
You're gonna walk out different than you walked in with a little more information, right? Not that you didn't know about the topics that we talked about, but a little more information was given today. So we're gonna have the panel come up, and you'll be able to have intimate conversations with them. All right, well, I'm gonna ask each one of them 2 questions. We're gonna go down, and then after that, it's turned over to the audience, and you could choose whoever you want to ask a question.
Mentoring agency born out of a position I had at a child welfare agency where I ran the fatherhood program. It was on the heels of my doing an internship that turned into employment and climbing the ladders, and really got the opportunity to do work, more intimate work with men, particularly men of color, which is what kind of informed what I spoke on today in terms of getting to hear the different perspective from a cultural lens, as well as a north-south lens and age spectrum. I think as men of color, we really need to reflect on some of the ills that we do bestow upon our own community. And really look at, the residual effects. Again, I mentioned I'm the father of 3 sons. Raising 3 black males in a society that'll, at one point, would lock them up quicker than society would educate them. And, on that, I'm really afraid of some of what's happening here in New York City in terms of the decriminalization of marijuana. I think it's going to become the new crack in communities of color. New York City being a target city where a lot of people want to move, so the housing market is skyrocketing. And I think there's a culmination of things that's happening that's going to squeeze the black community. So yeah, that's my short bio. I'm originally from South Carolina, moved to New York, been married 19 years, and love this city, but I'm really fearful of what could come. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards. Next, we have Mr. Ramos.
Hi, my name is Miguel Ramos, and I'm found some way professional, right? But mainly, I have been in the substance abuse field for almost since 2008, and currently I work for a place called Family Service Network of New York, and I'm a care manager for them, which is somewhere along the lines of the same concept, which is recovery, but I deal more with medical issues, mental health issues now, as opposed to substance abuse. How I got here, through working in this agency, I met Ms. Best, and came to find out I had experienced some of this stuff myself, and I have been witness to some of this stuff in my profession, and I was in the process of healing. And so I speak to the perspective of what happens to the male within a domestic violence relationship. I want to say that in my case, there's somewhat of a dual role because of how I was raised. We discussed it. We stay in relationships because we're supposed to be in a relationship. We say we marry for better or worse. We are subject to some of the same concepts that plague our society, negative concepts, such as male chauvinistic behaviors and ways of thought, male privilege, what I could get away versus what she could get away, so on and so forth. I speak about the subject of change and how to accept, leaving physically and emotionally that relationship, and what is the male perspective on that. And I thank you for letting me be here.
Again, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anita Joyner Taylor. I am the founder and executive director of Where the Healing Begins. Again, it's a nonprofit that provides support services for survivors of abuse, particularly child sexual abuse. I knew from my story and from the story of so many survivors and overcomers that I know that it was something that I was called to do, to make a difference in the lives of people in my community, and just feeling like and knowing that there was something that we could do, and that is educate ourselves about child sexual abuse and not pretend that it doesn't exist, for us to be able to talk about it openly, because that's how that enemy is defeated, when we stop hiding him. You know, when we stop hiding him and talk openly about things. We don't have to necessarily tell all of our business, but just to let people know that we know that it exists and that we as a people can make a difference with our children. Make sure, you know, we can heal from it through the counseling and the support services that are available to us in our communities, but we can also prevent it, because prevention is the key here, to prevent it from happening to our children, so they won't grow up and feel like we feel. Some of us have felt growing up with issues of all kinds of issues that we have had to deal with as a result of that. So again, I thank you for your time and attention.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rosalind McIntosh. I'm the founder of a nonprofit organization called Sisters Building Sisters in Brooklyn, and we empower women and girls in the areas of self-esteem and self-love. We also work with men too, but our key focus is empowering women and girls and making a difference. And how that came about, because I was it came about when I was 10 years old. The thought came when I was 10 years old, because I am the child of domestic violence. I'm one of the children of domestic violence. I'm the 7th child. I'm named after my mother. I hated my name my entire life until maybe about 7 years ago, because I'm named directly after my mother. My mother's name was Rosalind McIntosh, and people see me as Rosalind McIntosh II. I embrace it today. I embrace who I am, and I embrace my mother. Hated my mother growing up, despised her, because no one talked. They talked about the abuse that my father did, and you know, all the tragedy that he caused, and I saw all the dysfunction, and when we left not our parents, when we left our father, because instantly when my mother died, as it relates to the abuse, my grandparents, they immediately took us out of that household, and which I appreciate and honor that. But we left from the physical, the emotional, the physical, and every other kind of abuse, more so into the emotional and verbal abuse. So 10 years old, I said to myself, and it was a whole bunch of divisiveness among the children in the household. And I remember I wasn't allowed to go in the room to play with my siblings. And I was 10 years old and I was crying. And then I somehow snapped myself out of crying. And I just literally lifted up my head and I said, God, if you ever allow me to grow up, because I was brought up in a Christian home, if you ever allow me to grow up, I'm going to help hurting women and girls. I'm going to help my sisters. And then in actuality, not only helping my sisters, but I'm also helping myself. Amen. So we also have a mentorship program where we mentor young girls from the ages of 9 to 19. I thank you for this space.
Good afternoon. My name is Daryl Roden. Everybody calls me Al. I'm the founder of Light Love United, which stands for Learning Intellectually Through Experience, Love Understands Value. I'm real big on conflict resolution, and I look at open discussion as a way to really heal. I try to work with at-risk youth who just may have found themselves going down the wrong path and they need guidance, especially youth who feel like going down the wrong path is the best way to get attention and receptivity in places that they wasn't receiving. That being said, I allowed some of my life journeys to become testimonial. I put myself out there in the community as a latent example of what it could be to be socially inclined but still have a positive perspective about your day-to-days. And I live in that space right now. So thank you for having me here.
That's our panel. So panelists, please keep your responses to 90 at the most for time's sake. All right, so I'm gonna ask some questions, then I'm gonna turn it over to the audience. So, Mr. Edwards, what inspired you to start Edwards Mentoring?
Like I said, I went back for my master's. I did an internship at a child welfare agency that kind of propelled me into working with men. And as a director who moved up in the ranks, I was taken out of the classroom setting, but a lot of the men who were being referred to the program kept knocking on my door, wanting to talk to me on a more intimate level about some of their past traumas that they did not feel comfortable with talking into a group. So I transferred that modality to my own counseling firm, because as a director, you really don't work directly with the individual. And I had a boss at the time who wanted me to be in the community promoting the program, whereas I saw a greater need to give these men a safe space, no judgment, to talk, because otherwise they would have breezed through the program and never really dealt with issues that really undergirded why they were referred to the program to begin with. So that was my inspiration to founding my current company.
Okay, so when you talk about the spaces, you provided a safe space for the men to talk. What was some of the reasons why they felt unsafe in other options that they had to address their...
What I learned was a lot of the men that perpetuated domestic violence were in fact sexually abused by a family member. I had one gentleman who came in and he could not say it to another man, but I knew. I have a background working with sex offenders, teenage sex offenders, but I knew the healing started with his needing to say it instead of my saying it for him. This particular gentleman was struggling with the fact that his perpetrator lived in his community and he saw him every day, and he really wanted to kill. He did not want to leave to this society like he had been left by his father, who had done 25 years to life. And the perpetrator was able to perp against him because his mother was addicted and he was the guy supplying his mother with the drugs. So it was a very complex. So I kept hearing story after story after story. And interestingly, these are some of the men you would have never pinpointed as having been, because their bravado was a false wall. So that was a part of that whole process.
So, are you saying that many of the men that you provided therapy for, that because they were sexually abused, they had internalized anger that came out in their relationships that showed up as domestic violence?
Definitely.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you. Mr. Ramos, in a situation, and we're speaking general, in a situation where you have two people and the relationship dissolves, can you speak from the perspective of the male? What is that like? We talk about the woman, she got to get her life together, she's separated now, and she got to move on. But what is it like for a male to have to go through that process?
Well, it's a very lonely road, I'll tell you that much, because males in particular, we don't talk about pain. I was raised in Puerto Rico.
Reference line one,
And,
reference line one.
I was raised in Puerto Rico, and I was raised in a very male-chauvinistic place. I had the males of my family were businessmen and regular people, and then I had the other side, which are the drug dealers and all this. So it was just very male-centric. Women stayed with women, they did the kitchen situation, and we did the street situation. It was it like to leave that relation due to that upbringing? I just brought the bread home. I did not particularly, or on a personal level, I did not know how to do the bills. You know, I did not know how to take care of the everyday things that happen on the everyday, because I never developed those skills because I didn't have to. From another perspective, and as far as the emotional pain is concerned, you know, you find yourself in a very deep depression. It feels like a hole in your chest. It's a very empty space and lonely. And also, it's a very angry place because of the fact we don't talk about our trauma. You know, the anger reverses inward. And so you start experiencing self-defeating behaviors, you know, that leads to, you know, in my particular case, to a lack. I just started speaking. You know, a couple of years ago, I started developing my interpersonal relationship and communication skills because of the deep down depression and regression and keeping those feelings inside led me to just be quiet. You know, and when I was able to put that forward, you know, then I began the healing process. On the physical level, I'm a father of one, you know, I mean, I feel the privilege of being able to say that, right, because most guys at my age, you know, that I know about have more children than that. Apparently, I happen to do something right? Not continuing this thing of making babies and, you know. But from my part, it was very debilitating from the male perspective. That this is why I'm saying it, how I was raised, that my women live in a different roof than me is very debilitating as a male. I'm speaking from the perspective of your standards of what you call a male person, you know. And he deals with, I want to say, you having this, again, these self-defeating behaviors and not letting go. Because as males, we are raised to think that we're always supposed to have some sort of control. And the biggest part, I think, as a male, dealing with domestic violence, whatever role is it that you play, is letting go of whatever is that's not under your control, that you think is under your control. You know, and then you begin to ask questions of such, what led the other person to make the decision, and you take a look at what part you played in, you know, and I hope that was good enough.
That was good enough. Thank you for your honesty, Mr. Davis. The next question. You are a case act too, so you work with people who are recovering from substance abuse. Do you find a relationship between substance abuse and domestic violence?
Yes. Drugs have, you know, when we discuss drugs, we discuss higher power, right? This is what happens when people get high. They get high, right? And when you're able to subjugate somebody's brain in that way, you're able to do whatever it is that you want to do with the individual. So drugs play that role, that comfort role. Drugs become a comfortable place for people going through hardship. You know, drugs become a powerful place for people who like to prey on people. You know, and those are the roles that drugs play in our community. They either take away the pain or they empower us somehow. I remember a rapper, I think it was not Coogee Rap, but some other guy, I think it was Coogee Rap, one along those lines. He said that if it wasn't for drug dealers, you know, the hood wouldn't eat at some point. And that was a fact for a very long time, that we fed our community through the pain that we inflict on each other. You know, And that's the role the drugs have played in our community. They either empower us, you know, or they either support or take away the pain. You know, and as far as domestic violence is concerned, drugs play the role of who is in charge of this relationship. You know? Thank you.
Anita, what would you say to an abused child? Child who was molested and now is an adult, but is still suffering with the trauma. What would you say to that child?
First thing I would let them know is that it was not their fault. It was not their fault. And that they should have been believed, you know, if they were brave enough to say something about it. But nevertheless, that there are services that are available now that the healing process can definitely begin. That, you know, you don't have to walk around with hurt or anger, you know, or resentment or, you know, or being depressed or any of that they are probably feeling. But to let them know that healing is right here and that they can make the step if they choose to move forward and to let it go and to forgive. And forgiveness is not letting the person that hurt them off the hook. It is not. Forgiveness would be for them. And I would tell them that. Forgiveness is for you. It is to let you know that it's time to let it go. Forgiveness is for you to let you know that it's time to heal so that you can finally become all that you were created to be.
So I know you have an organization where the healing begins.
Yes.
And what inspired you to start that organization?
Wow. I'll say it in 90 seconds. I was, without getting too personal, because I know y'all want to hear my story, but I was dealing with my own issues and in counseling. And the counselor told me, was suggesting and asking me about some of the important people in my life. And of course I mentioned my daughter. She's my only child. And she suggested, make a long story short, suggested that I let her come to the counseling session with me. And of course I didn't because I didn't want to because my daughter looks at me like I'm Superwoman. So I didn't want her to diminish that image that she has of me. So, but I was receptive to the process, and I went, and she allowed her to come with me, and but instead of telling a story about my past, I got told one, and when she revealed to me that somebody had hurt her, and of course I went to pieces, you know, thinking that I had done everything that I was supposed to do to protect her. You know, even though I didn't know all the statistics at the time, but you know, nevertheless, it was awful. But that very day, you know, I went home and I dropped her off to her place and trying to process everything was the day that the name came to me, where the healing begins. And I knew that from my story, my daughter's story, and so many other stories that I've heard, that it was a need within our community that we had to, you know, do something, that I had to do something, whatever I could do to make a difference in our community. That's it.
So Rosalind, even though you didn't experience the domestic violence between your mother and father, but you heard about it, what impact did that have on you? Knowing that this took place, knowing that your mother died, knowing that your father was still alive, what impact did that knowledge have on you?
It had from day one, I was told that my father was no one, you know, that he was a tyrant, he was an abuser, he was a raper, he was just everything, and how he tortured my mother and my siblings, and then no one would talk about my mother. you know, no one would say anything, and we were given to her family, but no one had much to say. Everybody was like, oh, Roz was nice, but that's all they would say. Or they would say, you know, well, we tried to get to her, but she was so in love with him, she just stayed hid with him. And then it affected me because my mother wasn't there. And I truly believe that, because I'm a mother of one, and I truly believe that if my mother was alive, she would have instilled great self-esteem and different things like that, and she would have nurtured us. And the people, our grandparents that we went to, and the family members that we went to, my grandfather was a nurturer, and he died at 10, when I was 10 years old. And my grandmother was totally the opposite, and she probably, now looking at it in retrospect, she probably was traumatized, because here she was, they just got a new house, she had a 16-year-old or 15-year-old son living in the house, my uncle, and your 26-year-old daughter dies, but not only does she die, but she dies leaving 7 children behind, and then all of a sudden, you now become this huge family. You become a mother all over again, but to 7 children. And I could just imagine that it was traumatic for her, because she probably didn't even have a chance to grieve. But at the time, you know, she divided us. Like, she played the siblings against each other, and from playing us against each other, when I remember being 4 and 5 years old and running to her, because I used to, you know, say to my siblings, oh, it's not like that, because they used to say that the oldest one and the youngest one were the special children, and I'm the youngest. And I used to try to say, it's not like that, it's not like that. She loves all of us. Or she doesn't love me. And then I remember very early on in life going to my grandmother and saying, Mama, can I have a hug? And she would tell me time and time again, oh no, I don't tell people I love them. I don't do hugs. And that was from the very, you know, that was from the very beginning. And then she automatically would say, when I, you know, because we called her Mama as an endearment. She was our grandmother. And I would say, can I call you Mom? You know, can I call you Mom? Mom. She was like, no, I'm not your mother. Your mother's dead. So those things, they stayed with me, and they had a negative aspect on my childhood.
So you have an organization called Sisters Building Sisters. In 60 seconds, tell us what inspired you.
Just, you know, I thought it was my siblings, but it was myself and my siblings, the abuse, the neglect. I would say the strong neglect and not getting the self-worth that we were supposed to get as children. That's what made me do Sisters Building Sisters.
So you wanted to do that for other people?
Yes, to empower and make a difference, and let as many girls and women know that I possibly could let them know that they were loved and they were cared about, and, you know, someone was there and they were valuable.
So you, excuse me, wait till they finish. Right? Then you can ask all the questions. Now, you mentioned religion. How did religion help you get through that period? 60 seconds.
Okay, I would say to anyone, whatever faith you have, whatever path you choose to take spiritually, make it work for you. But I was brought up in a Christian home, so I'm a born-again believer in Christ, and that really helped me because I really was one, I take to reading, so just getting into the Word and allowing people to teach me the Word, and then for me to rightly divide it and get an understanding of it on the level that I could, somehow I learned how to take myself out of myself and look at myself and talk to myself and know, and also as a born-again Christian, we're taught that greater is He that's in me than he that's in the world. So I was always, whenever I hit rock bottom, it was never fully a rock bottom, because I had a bounce back. I had a greater inside of me. Yes.
Okay, next we have Al. spoke about growing up and being raised by your grandmother. And she comes from a different generation, like we talked about earlier. And you're in the current generation. So was there a gap in understanding you and your needs that existed in that relationship? Can you talk about that?
Yes, ma'am. Similar to the young lady right here, I was the youngest and the only boy, and I was born in jail. My grandmother, she lost all three of her kids in 4 years. So between 1990 and 1993, she lost all three of her kids, right? I was born in jail, and I came out as a result to substance use. My mom went from being a 30-year-old captain in corrections to a full-out heroin addict, and one who was dabbling with crack cocaine. And both me and my sister, who was closest to me in age, who's just 3 years older than me, we both came out through a sick womb, if that makes sense. Anybody who knows the history knows what's going on in the 80s for what it's worth. But I also have I have two siblings, one 18 years older than me, one 14 years older than me. And so as I was coming up, just through family conversations that I would be able to bear witness to or overhear, I realized that I came up during a time where my grandmother, as hers, didn't get a chance to instill affection and had to more or less raise me to ensure that I knew how to take care of myself. One thing my grandmother always said is that I'm raising you to make sure that you do everything you need to do for yourself, whether I'm here or not, because nobody's going to be able to take care of you like you need to take care of yourself. And to this day, some of the things that stay with me is I don't really identify to love that's not collateral on how I know it to be from the generation I grew up with. I had whatever past and runners with, whatever upbringing that I came, and that was more or less cries for attention. Again, being the youngest only boy, my grandmother being 64 when I was born, what I'm trying to understand and relate to in the world is totally different than what she's trying to safeguard me from. And so those difference in what I'm trying to understand versus what she's trying to instill opened the door to a lot of different curiosity that, just produce and birth some actions that force me to live and learn. And I'm thankful for it today because I never went through nothing that didn't make sense for how I look in the mirror today. And I got a better understanding for what it is that she went through. And I'm thankful.
Second question. Now, and this question can apply to a few different ones on there, so after he answers, either of the others who want to answer can also answer. But we're going to keep our answers short because we have people with questions, right? So now, growing up, and so you said that the affection part wasn't there, but the strength part in taking care of yourself was there. Now, as you got into your adult relationship and you had a female, a woman, and it was time, I'm not talking about sex now, I'm talking about affection, it was time to show affection. Did you struggle with that?
I really tied it into my ability to provide and protect. I was really raised to be classy as a man, but as a man's man. So, think about it, my grandmother, 64, she's raising me. She's teaching me to be able to be self-sufficient, so that way, when it's my time to sit at the head of the table, I'm able to extend it to everybody who's supposed to be at the table. And so I went into relationships really looking to make sure that I was either breaking even or not losing for what it is that I was bringing to the table. Like I really walked with a lot of skill sets that the average person in my age group didn't have. We had an older siblings. I was a little bit more self-aware and a little bit more in tune with different dynamics that will play in the present and in the future. And so in relationships and love, when I started to realize I had a problem when I met my son Mom, who, wonderful woman, very classy herself, but what I needed within the relationship and what I needed in love, she couldn't give me. And so when I started to be a little bit more self-analytical, I realized I might have did myself a disservice because being young, being financially free at a young age, I was 16 dealing with older women. Like, I was in the system, I was in the group home for a little while, I came home from that, I got to a lot of street money, I'm well known in Harlem, I was popular, and it gave me the advantage to be able to date women out my age group. Like, I had an ex-girlfriend who was 12 years older than me, we was together for 5 years. She taught me a lot, it was a wonderful thing, but fast forward to my son Mom, she's only 3 years older than me, and I look for her to be the big spoon. Anybody who know what that is?
Be the
big
what?
spoon, the big spoon. So that's a theory in which you want the person from the outside to color you versus you coloring them. And so, as well as I can provide and protect inside the household, inside the bedroom, especially with the line of work that I do as a program director, helping people going through whatever distresses, I need somebody to help me. I need somebody to safeguard me, reassure me I'm okay, and that all the things that I'm dealing with day in and day out is good. And when I wasn't meeting that, I walked in and out the house with a lot of frustration, a lot of hate, and I felt like should have been projected to her. But in reality, it's like something that is tied into me and my upbringing. So once I got in tune with that, and I respected the truth behind it, I started to free myself and just realize like, yeah, I need to get into that self-love thing. And so I invested time into that, and that's what light love came into.
Thank you. Anybody else want to share on that question before we turn it over to the audience?
Expressing affection, love. Having the wrong models, for men coming up, the average wrong model. Because I'm not going to say that in my family nucleus there were not men, there were not good men. But most of what I learned, what was affection, right, was all about the wrong notion of sex. And so, given affection, I thought, while in my marriage, that sex was about, affection was about me showing it through sexual gratification, through me being able to hug, touch, or she doing the same. And so I could not understand that because it was just that we were not in the mood because we were abusing each other, And so, if I was unable to express my love, what I thought love was, which was mostly sexual, right? Then I had no relationship, or there was something wrong, And after I became more mature, I learned, how to feel. I learned what this emotion is about because just like the young man, I have a past, and in my past, you couldn't show any. There's no such thing as showing weaknesses of any kind. Something happened, we don't have that middle conversation. You see, we have this middle conversation. We have an incident, a resolution, in between there should be a conversation. We were raised without that middle conversation. That was not part of our script. Something happened, you take care of it, whoa, And so coming up out of this environment into adulthood, into marriage, I was really not mature enough to know what was love and how to show love. I learned that, I want to say 7 years ago, as early as 7 years ago, began to learn how to properly emotionally, deal with emotion and how to express love. Because I thought love was just bringing a paycheck in. It's not about that. It's about the time. It's about what you do for the other individual. It's about bringing progress to their relationship. It's not about just bringing the bread home. There are things that you have to do if you love somebody. At one point I thought it was just sex and my ability to use this woman, or be used by the women in this way. Because again, my role was a dual role. And at some point I didn't even understand who was the abuser. It was that murky, where you're traumatized and re-traumatize each other so much that you are unable to recognize what role you play in this relationship.
Thank you. So I want to say to all of you, thank you so much for being honest, being transparent, and sharing a part of yourself with us. It's awesome, it's amazing, and I'm sure everybody in this audience is with heartfelt appreciation that you were here and was able to share that information. And especially coming from, no disrespect to the ladies, but coming from the guys, to hear the men talk about what it's like emotionally. Let's dig into that. you know, what it feels like. It's not that easy when a relationship break up and she goes her way, he goes his way. He has to get his life together too. It's not easy being in a relationship with someone where you're going to college and you're progressing and this person is not keeping up with you. Then what do? Pull them up? Do you leave? I mean, you're in a dilemma, especially if you love the person and you have children. I want to say thank you so much to the guys. Ladies, you know I love you. And so now, at this point, I'm going to turn it over to the audience, and we're going to stay until they kick us out. If you have questions, now is the time to answer them.
I think what we have done sometimes, maybe I'm an older person, you know, so I got married at 20, and I'll be honest about it because he's dead. I married an ex-junkie who was on methadone. And my parents didn't know for 7 years. And after a while, I'd rather you don't take.
Have gone through something. And my thing through all of this, I appreciate it. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming.
Because it was such touching, heartfelt testimonies. Because we need that. All of us, I have things in my life, one of these days I will, but God has given me the strength and the courage and the energy to survive. And that's why I put myself out there to help the young children of today. Like I was telling you,
She's a fighter.
and I fight for this community.
She's the mayor of the community.
Okay, all right. And I went through something about 2 years ago. We were fighting for this light at 219th Street by the school. We finally got it. They said, Miss Peggy, we should name the light after you. Well, no, I didn't do it by myself, but I kept on. So we finally got it. So when I went to the school, they said, oh, Miss Peggy, the light is about here. And I approached some of the teachers in the school. And I said, how do you like the light? Oh, Lord. And she's had the nerve to say to me, well, it can become some kind of congested at times. That threw me back so bad that, like, I had to pray in that auditorium. Because these are about our children. Why aren't you happy about safety of our children? And you don't even live in the community. But you know what I'm saying? So you should have said, thank you. So I'm about the community, and I appreciate every last one of y'all's stories. And because, thank you so much. And thank you for calling
I just want to give you the first time in which I really got to a panel and I'm here and I'm enthused and I feel more delighted than anything I've ever done, and I've done some things in my life. And more or less because of the different generations. You know, to see Miss Peggy, who I just met, who's the mayor of this neighborhood, find herself emotionally on the results of us just being committed to just coming and having a conversation. And I just want y'all to understand that anything that I felt we did for y'all, I have to say on behalf of everybody else at the family, I did for us as well, because it's a give and take situation. I just ask that we don't stop the conversation here, and that we challenge ourselves to change perspective that we had coming in here, and to see if something about the changed perspective gives us reason to stand in a different position and have a bigger voice on the issue here. And I just want to send a major thank you to everybody on the panel, because y'all understand how y'all started the conversation however long ago, help a person like me continue the conversation, and we're going to have a guaranteed influence of this trusted process.
Any other questions?
I explained to Miss Gordon, my parents are deceased and I inherited everything. I'm the only child. Now that everybody's crying, and my family.
We appreciate you. We do.
So I want to say thank you, because I did it. I
of every month, we are here, the Circle of Transformation, and we continue to have conversations like this. The conversations are geared around empowering women. Because I believe if you empower a woman, she empowers the family, and then the family empowers the community. So come out and join us. Barbara's going to give you a flyer. We also do paint, healing through painting. So 45 minutes. So every workshop that we do in the Circle of Transformation is about a different topic. Sorry guys, it's only for the women. But when they get the information, they take it home to their husbands, their boyfriends, their sons. And so ladies, the next one is November 9th. And that one, we will be using visual art to process trauma, pain, experience, whatever you want to process. We do a meditation first, and then we paint. So we have some people here who went to the painting one that's here. You see, this is all the Circle of Transformation. We do this. And this is what gives us strength to move forward.
A gentleman said that it's only for women.
Yeah. The Circle of Transformation is for ladies.
Well, I really wanted to just thank everybody for speaking up and sharing your points of view. I just moved to the community like 2 months ago, from Mount Vernon. And so I've been looking for spaces such as this to really start, speaking. And I was just like really touched by everyone. And I will say for the men, of course, ladies, we are always talking on our side, but it's so interesting to always hear the man's perspective, especially when they've gone through the growth and development and the accountability process within themselves, and to hear it is exhilarating.
Yeah,
When you're talking
difficult, they're very difficult to work with, and, all day long, all I hear is the B word, F you, suck this, and I'm like, and you, like you said, this is the younger generation, and we have to do night meetings every night, so I try to have different topics, to let them see that they can move forward. They don't have to stay in that negative space all the time, but so maybe if you will be willing to come out.
I love it. I take it as an honor and a privilege, and I just want to say, wow, to me this is full circle, because one of our mentees, she is an A1 student. She's a leader and everything, but she was in an environment where her mother was in a gang. This was just, this was recent as last year, and her mother raised her to be an amazing young lady, but then at the age of 16, her mother just decided, like, okay, now I'm going to bring you into the real world. Now you're going to start stealing for me. Now you're going to start, I'm going to start, grooming you for this life that I know you should live, or that I desire for you to live. So the young lady, and she wanted her to meet a young man. She was like, it's time for you to have a boyfriend. Just everything just went crazy in a matter of not even months, just like a short period of time. And to make a long story short, the young lady ran away because she just was exposed to too much, and she knew what her mother had originally taught her, but I believe it stems from mental illness. And last year, the young lady was just going from friend house to friend house. So I spoke to the mother, and I was like, well, you gave her to Sisters Building Sisters to mentor her. So, basically, you can come at me how you feel, but this young lady is not going to be a wayward girl. She's just not. She's going to graduate, and she went from best friend house to my house. She ended up staying with me for a total of 3 weeks. And I said to her, this can't happen the way it's going. You're going to have to decide. You're going to really have to look at things. I know you love your mother, but everything's toxic right now. You're going to either have to go with your best friend's mother legally, or you're going to have to come to me legally, because we can't have you running around or whatever. And I spoke to her mother and her oldest brother, and they said, we'll just put her in a home, because the mother felt like, I'll put her in a home, she'll get caught up. So how it came back full circle, I took another young lady to Covenant House, but I also took her to Covenant House, and she stayed there last summer for a few weeks, and she got into a confrontation with a young lady, she got into a fight, and she had to leave that house to go to another house. Long story short, someone from her mother's past saw her and knew of the drama and trauma, and they got her through the foster system, and just last June, we went marching down the graduation aisle. And now she's in college. So, those are the things that keeps me pushing, and now to come and hear you invite me to come and empower other girls there, that's like amazing. So I thank you.
It's a shelter for homeless adolescents.
Right.
And a lot of we have males as well, but I work with the young ladies. A lot of them come from environments where they were raped, abused, neglect, or sometimes because of their sexual orientation. So that's why they're there. And sometimes they do not want to listen. They want freedom. And a lot of them are very angry. I mean, we get it every day.
Right.
And they don't believe in rules or regulations. So, I mean, we try, but maybe if they can hear from somebody else, I appreciate that very much.
And I thank you all at Covenant House for the work that you do and the space that you have available for girls. Thank you.
Oh, you're right there in mid-Manhattan.
No, I don't know. You wanted to ask a question? I got in late, but I surmised from your sharing on the panel, I got a sense of your journey. And I just want to applaud your journey for bringing you to this point. And I would like to ask each and every one of you, if you were to plant a seed of wisdom for the future to help these kids, get to life, what would you put in that seed? What saying? What wisdom would you offer? If you could put it in a saying or a sentence or whatever, what would you tell the child in the future they need to know to navigate through this life?
My saying would be that your current situation isn't your future.
Your current situation is your
Yeah, because I'm experiencing a lot of young people who think this is it.
Yes,
Right?
that's true.
And if the backdrop is some of what we've been describing, they don't see themselves outside of that. I host a round table on Sundays, and about a month ago, I put the question of what is respect on the table. A lot of young men who grew up in the Jamaica area all had a different definition of it, which was very negative. And then the other thing that was interesting from that conversation, none of them thought they would live beyond 16, 17. And so when I posed the question, what was your vision for your life? They didn't see a life beyond. So, that was kind of critical for me, because I knew from age 6, 7, even though I grew up in a single parent household, product of a one-night stand, I knew I wanted to be an attorney. So I always had a purpose-driven life. And then, in the South, I had an aunt who pretty much came to New York, lived in the Bronx. In the South, New York was the place to come. But then when I got here, I would visit, it felt like, no pun, it felt like a cage to me, because in the South, we were able to navigate our community because every other house was a family member or somebody who knew each other.
Yeah.
So even now when it comes to holidays, I feel like a fish out of water, because the feeling that I grew up in, however, dysfunctional it was different. So when I hear men who are younger than me telling me they didn't expect to live beyond 16, 17, it's bone chilling, because they have no hope. And so they get up every day just to grind with nothing as an incentive that they're trying to reach. And it's almost like you think about the dream deferred poem, there was no dream that was deferred. You know, so that to me, you know, is why I say your current situation. You know, I get a lot of adolescent girls and boys who think their current relationship at 15, 16, going back to my 17-year-old son's girlfriend, she's thinking this is it, which scares me because I'm like saying to my son, I gotta school you on, if you guys become sexually active, she may try to hook you, and not being accusatory, but if her reality is this is it, she may try to lock him down with a pregnancy. So it's like you're navigating this dynamic that is really a mentality. You know, so that's what I would give in terms of a phrase or a mantra that I leave with people.
Current situation is your future. Thank you. I wrote it down because I forget it.
A phrase that I use is, if you're here today, there's a purpose and a plan for your life. If you wake up tomorrow, you definitely need to know there's a purpose and a plan.
Say that again. Say that again. We don't take shorthand. Go ahead.
If you're here today,
If you are here today,
there's a purpose and a plan for your life. If you wake up tomorrow.
Wait a minute, what you
Okay.
there's a purpose.
If you're here today,
If you're here today, there's a purpose and a plan for your life. If you wake up,
oh boy, yeah, okay. Wake up, okay.
tomorrow,
Okay.
there's definitely a purpose for your life. And for those of you that are believers, if you wake up tomorrow, believers in Christ, if you wake up tomorrow, God has a purpose and a plan for your life.
Thank you.
It is so.
I want to say this, especially being more or less a direct reflection of the statement Mr. Edwards made. I know what it is. I told you I got 3 older siblings. But I know what it is at 19 going on to 20 crying, thinking I wasn't going to see it through my 20th birthday because of how deep I was into the lifestyle I was living at that time. And then look at me today. Like, I don't want to sound arrogant or cocky, but I know what I represent because I'm true to know where I came from, right? And so if I had to answer that, one thing I would say is trust your process. I'll give it to all of you, especially anybody who I left on the avenue. If they speak to me about wanting to change and not knowing what that is, if I feel like when we're speaking and being receptive to any plays that I'm giving them, as quick as I wrap it up, I'll tell them to trust their process. But one thing I live on, this is a fact, and I think it speaks for me just being true to whatever that was. Seek first to understand, then to be understood. And the reason why that worked for me, because a lot of the things that I did through trial and error was aiming to get people to understand me or to accept me with hopes of them not trying to dig in to further understand me, because I really didn't understand myself. But when I respected the truth in that and I aimed to better understand myself and what that is and how that played a root into some of the decisions I made, I understand why it's important for me to seek understanding first of what's going on and how we're going to play a role of possibly interject or implement a change or impulsive behavior on my end. And so that's just 2 things I know is timeless, and it can go for anybody if you're in tune and willing to take a level of accountability, like the young lady said. Trust your process, seek first to understand and to be understood, and life's going to give you whatever it's going to give you. But you should be in a better space if I had to say so.
Y'all should write a book. So serious. I mean, this is, it's just so, it's just.
That make me human, and not a thing, not some sort of object or mass of flesh moving around doing whatever I want that comes out of my desire, not from thought. So using your time, in a best productive way, I think is the thing that I would say is never do things which are of no use.
Add to that, in terms of time, you'll hear time and money, you spend time, you spend money, right? So you spend money, you can get more money, right? But when you spend time, and like Miguel said, you spend time doing the wrong thing, That time is gone and you will never get it back. It's gone forever. Good point.